That morning, sunlight poured golden over the glass roof of the city's largest financial tower. Zuri Brooks drove her black Range Rover into the VIP garage where a bronze plaque clearly read "Reserved for CEO." But that day, the title held no weight. A new security guard, a white face, firm and unyielding, a slow gaze tracing from the steering wheel to her skin, and then a cold sentence delivered like a slap. "This building doesn't accept morning deliveries, young lady." Zuri didn't back down. She lowered the window, calmly held up her access card, and stated her name. But calm wasn't enough. Not for Edgar, a man who believed power only wore ties and light skin. A call was made. One of her subordinates came down to verify her identity. She was allowed in. But there was no apology, no look of regret, only the forced silence of a man who didn't yet realize he had just insulted the owner of the entire place. Zuri said nothing more, but she remembered. "Imposter monkey. Go home." Red letters echoed like a cruel laugh in the basement. Security cameras signal lost for exactly 15 minutes. Coincidence? Or cover-up? Zuri didn't escalate. No meeting. No lawsuit. She quietly logged the time, the location, and the jagged handwriting deep in her memory. On the freeway, during rush hour, her SUV spun out of control and crashed into the barrier. Zuri survived with only minor injuries. But no one could tell whether that was luck or a warning. Once again, security footage was unavailable for 15 minutes. Only this time, there was a witness no one expected. You're watching Racist Exposed, where hidden bias is brought to light. Like, subscribe, and share if you believe this. Silence is also a form of resistance, and the truth never dies. This story began like any other workday, only this time, the person in power was the one questioned for simply existing. The charcoal Range Rover turned onto the final curve of Grant Street. Its tinted windows reflected the towering skyscrapers behind her, places that once belonged to others, and now belonged to her. Zuri Brooks didn't play music. She preferred the hum of the engine in the early morning, steady, grounded, like the rhythm of the life she had built deal by deal, negotiation by negotiation, mistaken identity by mistaken identity. The bronze plaque shimmered in the 7:02 a.m. light reserved for CEO, L1A. She scanned her access card. The LED flashed green. But the gate didn't open. A man stepped out of the security booth. White shirt, stained with sweat, radio crackling at his hip. White, late 30s, eyes not even trying to hide judgment. "Sorry, this area is for senior management only." His tone was hard. No apology, no courtesy. Zuri lifted her chin, voice calm. "I'm Zuri Brooks. I have a card, and this license plate is registered." He looked at the card, then at her, as if the card were a prop, and she just playing a part. "Maybe someone lent it to you. This garage doesn't take morning pastry deliveries." Silence. Zuri blinked. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just long enough to let silence mean something other than submission. "I'll call someone to verify," she said, already tapping her phone. On the 15th floor, her assistant Miles received the call. No explanation, just 2 words, "Come down." In the garage, the guard Edgar called backup. Evelyn, white, mid-30s, narrowed her eyes at Zuri. "Can you turn off the engine? Step out and wait by the far wall. Why for verification? New protocol for special cases." Special cases. Zuri didn't move. She turned her face toward the nameplate on the wall. Her name. Some doors don't stay closed for security reasons. They close because of programming, called prejudice. The garage echoed with the sharp steps of Miles. His polished black shoes caught the pale flicker of fluorescent light. He said nothing, just held out his executive badge, her photo printed on the back. "Founder and CEO." Edgar frowned. Evelyn shrugged. "Oh, so it's real." No remorse in her voice, only a tinge of disappointment like someone whose party joke just fell flat. Miles turned to Zuri. "Apologies for the inconvenience. I'll take you straight to the executive floor." Zuri didn't answer. She didn't need anyone to apologize on her behalf. Edgar hit the gate release reluctantly. The gate opened with a metallic shutter, swallowing the air from the garage. Zuri drove through not too fast, not slow enough for their eyes to follow. She parked in spot L1A, perfectly aligned, the white paint measured to the millimeter, just for her. But when she stepped out, her stride was slower than usual, not out of fear, out of memory. That feeling was familiar. Her first day in the boardroom at 31 asked if she was there to make coffee. The time she was denied first class because this seat is for business passengers, and the gala she sponsored, only to be directed by staff to the catering section. Proving her identity had become a daily ritual for a successful black woman. On the 15th floor, she entered her office, walnut-trimmed LED lights gleaming against the glass-etched logo, Brooks Equity Group. Zuri sat down, removed her blazer, opened her laptop. A notification blinked in the corner. Security report, incident log, unregistered stop at gate L1, filed by Edgar Mason. She clicked it open. The notes read, "Unknown. Black female attempted unauthorized access to garage. Claimed to be CEO. Entry later confirmed. Protocol breach." Zuri closed her laptop. She wasn't angry. Anger was for those still trying to be convinced. She simply remembered. That evening, she didn't go home right away. She stayed until nearly 9 p.m., not because of overwork, but because of a kind of silence that only comes after business hours. When keyboards stop tapping, when elevators stop humming, only then could she fully see the city outside, bright, cold, and indifferent. She picked up her black Parker pen, a gift to herself after last year's Series B, and wrote one sentence in her notebook. Being let in doesn't mean being welcomed. It wasn't written for anyone else to read. It was for her to remember. On her way down to the garage, she passed a maintenance worker checking the fuse box. He nodded quickly, avoiding eye contact like dodging an open wound. Some eyes turn away out of shame. Others, like Edgar's that morning, stare straight through you to assign your place. She stopped before her car. Someone had wiped down the area around her spot unusually clean. Miles texted, "FYI, I reported the incident to HR. Edgar's pay will be docked one day for breach of protocol." Zuri replied with a single period. No emotion, no command, no instructions needed. Just as she opened her car door, a hand blocked it. "Edgar." "Evening," he said, half smiling. "Just wanted to say, no hard feelings." "Right." Zuri didn't look at him. "Hard feelings from what I mean. I didn't know who you were, but now I do. And I'd hate to lose my job over a misunderstanding. You get it. Then today's your lucky day. Lucky because I don't need to forgive what was never apologized for." She shut the door. The window glided up, cutting her off from his voice. But Edgar's gaze stayed, no longer curious. It was the look of a man, threatened by a silence too sure of itself. On her dashboard, the GPS displayed the route home. But Zuri didn't press start just yet. She sat for a minute. In that moment, she felt it clearly. Some people aren't afraid of being fired. They're afraid of someone like her simply existing. Zuri didn't go into the office over the weekend. Instead, she stopped by the design studio, then visited her mother. Her Range Rover remained parked in the level L1 garage like a mechanical beast resting after days of silent service. Monday morning, 6:45 a.m., she returned to the building earlier than usual. The receptionist hadn't arrived yet. The lobby was cold and still. The elevator chimed with a dull, lifeless ding. And as the garage door slid open, Zuri knew something was wrong. The fluorescent lights hit the side of her car. Red. Not the red of a warning sign, not the red of brake lights, but a smeared, wet, heavy red like the blood caught in the throat of someone choking on her very existence. On the car door, a jagged line of graffiti stretched across. Imposter monkey. Go home. The first two words in all caps, each letter etched like it had been stabbed into the metal with the blade of racial hatred. Red paint clung to the side mirror, dripping onto the concrete floor like fresh blood spilled. Zuri didn't scream. She didn't turn away. She simply stood there in the chill of the underground garage, beneath the soft hum of rotating vents, and looked. There was no one there, no witness, no echo of footsteps fleeing the scene. Only the raw truth, her skin, her car, and a threat. She pulled out her phone, called the tech team. Her voice was steady. Just one sentence. I need camera footage from level L1, between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. this morning. There was a pause on the line. Then, yes, but the level L1 feed looks like it dropped signal for about 15 minutes, from 3:42 to 3:57 a.m. Zuri said nothing. She ended the call and walked toward the writing. Under the lights, each droplet of paint reflected her face. Not a face of anger, but a face that was remembering. When the tech team arrived, Zuri was already waiting. Not inside the car, not pacing around, just standing as if it were the scene of a crime. And she was the last witness left alive. The technician was a young man, his face pale as he saw the words painted on the door. Oh my God, I'll check the cameras right away, Miss Brooks. Zuri nodded. She didn't need reactions. She needed data. 10 minutes later, Miles appeared, carrying a printed copy of the internal security report. It stated clearly, Level L1, video feed interruption between 3:42 a.m. and 3:57 a.m. Auto reboot. No footage stored during this time window. Zuri turned the page. A small note at the bottom. Night shift Edgar Mason. She folded the report. No anger, no orders, no reprimand, just silence as if her roar was being saved for a moment that truly mattered. Outside, the maintenance crew began scrubbing the paint. The red streaks bled into the water, dripping to the concrete, carrying with them the sharp smell of solvents, and something unnamed like the faint stench of contempt that had been rinsed but never really washed away. Miles leaned closer and spoke quietly. Should I notify HR request a full investigation? Zuri shook her head. Not yet. Log it. Upload the images to the system, and have IT lock all security footage 24 hours before and after the incident. No one touches it. Miles nodded. No further questions. He was used to a kind of power that didn't need to raise its voice. At the far end of the garage, Edgar stood watching, one hand braced on the wall, eyes following every movement like none of it concerned him. Zuri didn't glance in his direction, but she knew. She knew that when someone watches too closely, it's not curiosity, it's calculation. It's the search for weakness. She got into the car. Her hand rested lightly on the steering wheel. She didn't start the engine. She simply felt the cold of the metal like a reminder that some violence doesn't scream with bullets. It leaks in quiet drops through behavior. By noon, the paint had been scrubbed clean. The car returned to its flawless black sheen. No trace remained, at least to the naked eye. But Zuri didn't drive it home. She sent it to a diagnostics center for a full inspection. Not out of fear, but out of habit, the habit of someone who has survived a world where carelessness isn't an option. Especially not for someone black. Back in her office, Miles handed her a USB containing 48 hours of camera footage around the time of the incident. She took it, placed it neatly in a drawer secured by fingerprint lock. No one knew, but her, that this drawer held fragments of years in silence, emails where someone clicked reply, all with mocking words, recordings of meetings where laughter shifted the second she entered the room, documents that seemed trivial, but once bruised someone deeply and no one spoke up. At 3:17 p.m., Edgar walked into the security control room. He didn't see Zuri standing behind the one-way glass, watching from the upper floor. He laughed with a colleague, joked, even made a crack about the paint incident. They say the camera glitched. Glitched for real or glitched? What do you think? That line was picked up by the building's surveillance mic. The one Edgar forgot was still recording everything inside the security suite. Zuri heard it all. Not to get angry, not to retaliate immediately, But to capture the truth at its root, the most dangerous kind of prejudice isn't the one that shouts in the open. It's the small, repeated acts, grown in the dark until they think they can't be caught. By day's end, Zuri typed one line into her encrypted journal. Justice doesn't always arrive on the day of offense, but she never forgets the address. She didn't call HR, didn't convene the executive board, didn't summon legal counsel. Not yet. Because the art of true power is knowing when to act, and when to let the enemy expose themselves. Thursday, 6:42 a.m. The sky was still gray. Cold wind from the river swept across the glass facade of the Brooks Equity Building. Zuri stepped out of a pre-booked car service, a rare break from habit. The night before, after a strategy meeting that dragged past 11 p.m., she'd been too tired to drive. Miles had suggested an Uber Black. She agreed, leaving her vehicle in the company's garage. Just for one night, she thought. The VIP garage on level L1 housed only 4 cars, all registered and encrypted in the system. No reason to worry. But that morning, as the elevator descended, the basement greeted her with an unnatural stillness. Her Range Rover sat there, untouched. Perfect. Like every day. Except, every day didn't leave a chill down her spine when she opened the door. Zuri stepped in, shut the door, and started the engine. No error, no warning chime, just a faint smell, burnt plastic, barely noticeable beneath the lingering scent of cabin perfume. She blinked. Her instinct said something was wrong. Her logic dismissed it. The car's still new, probably the AC kicking in early. She exited the garage at 7:08 a.m., destination Hotel Aurea, where she was scheduled to deliver a keynote at the Regional Investment Summit at 9:00. The topic: trust in uncertain systems. Irony had never arrived this early. On Garvey Boulevard, the traffic light turned yellow. Zuri hit the brakes. Nothing happened. The brake pedal dropped beneath her foot like it had lost its soul. No resistance, no sound, no response. Left a truck. Right steel barricades. Zuri swerved right, body leaning with instinct, guiding the SUV to grind along the railing like a beast clawing for traction. The screech of metal wasn't the sound of an accident, it was a coded warning, written in velocity. The airbags deployed. The SUV halted. No rollover, no spin-out. But a long, scorched line burned across the asphalt like a message that had been inked in the basement at dawn. 3 hours later, at the police station. Brake line was cut, clean, intentional, possible felony tampering. Zuri sat upright, her voice crisp. My vehicle was parked overnight at the office, in the internal garage, under full security surveillance. She didn't mention Edgar, not yet. Some names rise on their own like oil leaking into still water. Zuri didn't return to the office after the station. She went straight to her penthouse, turned off her phone, and soaked in the tub until the water turned cold. Not because of pain, not because of fear, but because she needed absolute silence to hear what others often miss. The truth. Sometimes it doesn't scream. It clicks softly as a camera blinks off at just the wrong moment. 11:40 a.m. Miles knocked. He carried a folder from the tech department, his face more tense than usual. Camera feed on level L1 dropped from 2:12 to 2:27 a.m. 15 minutes. Same time frame your car was parked alone. Zuri flipped through the report. Her eyes stopped at a bold red line. No footage available due to system refresh during scheduled update. That day specifically, only that day. Who authorized the update? Edgar Mason. Zuri looked up. She said nothing. But her gaze lowered the room temperature by a few degrees. Miles hesitated. Should I call security, alert the board? Zuri shook her head. No, not yet. But the timing, the brakes, we know I need proof. Miles, not suspicion. She stood. Her footsteps didn't echo, but each one landed like it was forged in steel. She left the room with a single line. The truth, Miles, always leaves traces, even when someone thinks they've wiped them all away. That evening, Zuri reviewed system archives from a forgotten auxiliary camera mounted on the basement hallway ceiling. A dead corner. Assumed decorative. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. A figure exited the technical control room at 2:31 a.m. No hat, no mask, white shirt, security blue trousers, cheap brand shoes. The gait was disturbingly familiar. Zuri paused the video, zoomed in. A brief glance at the face under dim hallway light. She needed no confirmation, no time log, no witnesses. It was him. Next morning, when Edgar reported for duty, the access gate had already been reprogrammed. His card didn't scan. He tried again, then a third time. Still red. System error, he asked the desk officer. The man shrugged. Maybe Ms. Brooks updated permissions after the accident. Edgar smirked, veered toward the side door, unaware that every step he now took was tracked by the woman he thought he had scared into silence. On the 15th floor, Zuri sat at her desk, rewatching the hallway footage. A cup of hot tea by her left hand, a quote board hanging beside her screen, the words etched in clean serif. Never raise your voice, improve your argument, and let silence finish your sentence. She didn't send an email, didn't schedule a meeting. Instead, she forwarded the USB with the hallway footage to the head of legal with a single directive. Cross-check with vehicle maintenance logs. If confirmed, escalate to external counsel, quietly. 3 hours later, Miles sent an internal message. Vehicle logs show no brake service requested or scheduled. Tampering not recorded. Conclusion: deliberate sabotage. Matches with camera blackout. Evidence solid. Zuri didn't reply. She opened a leather-bound notebook, one she reserved for things she couldn't type, and wrote. He tried to silence me with steel. I'll answer with exposure. That afternoon, Edgar was summoned to HR, not to be fired, not yet. Just a preliminary conversation, but what he didn't know was from that moment on, every word he spoke would be recorded. Zuri didn't need to be in the room. She didn't need to look him in the eye. She already had. Now it was time for the system to clean itself under the pressure of truth. And when silence reaches its limit, it is no longer surrender. It becomes a weapon. 1 week passed. Zuri's car accident didn't make the news. No leaks in the company. No anonymous quotes whispered to blogs or buried in press briefs. Because Zuri didn't need publicity. She needed evidence. Friday morning. Miles walked into her office, holding a wrinkled document pouch. He said nothing, just placed a hard drive on her desk, with a folded A4 note on top. Dashcam footage from the Polaris SUV parked directly across from your car in garage L1 early morning of the incident. Owner forgot to turn off automatic recording. Zuri looked at the hard drive. A witness, eyeless, incapable of lying, just recording coldly, truthfully. She opened her laptop, plugged it in, and hit play. The footage was slightly blurry headlights from the Polaris casting a weak glow. Garage L1 sat in sealed silence. 1:57 a.m. A figure approached Zuri's car. Quick, decisive. He crouched at the front left wheel, pulled out a metal tool, either pliers or a utility blade. Black gloves, one, clean, cut. No hesitation. No glance around like someone afraid of getting caught. Just a man who'd done this before, or someone who believed no one would dare trace it back to him. 2:03 a.m. He stood up, faced the Polaris and the dashcam still quietly recording. No mask, no lowered head, no attempt to hide. Zuri paused the frame, zoomed in. A side profile caught in the light, faint scar beneath the right eye, square jaw, blue security uniform, a flicker of a company logo. Edgar. Zuri closed her eyes and heard it again, the missing brakes, the metal scraping the barricade, the airbag bursting like the final gasp of trust. Betrayed. Then she opened her eyes, called Miles. Make 3 copies, one for me, one for legal, one for the police department. Understood. Zuri didn't need anger. She didn't need a speech. She only needed 6 minutes of video, enough to tear through a system that had been corroding under its own arrogance. Down in the garage, her parking spot looked the same. Fresh paint layered over the old wound. But now Zuri knew. No coat of paint can cover the trail of truth. And a witness made of steel had seen everything. That afternoon, the video clip was sent to two places. Her personal law office in New York. The Internal Investigations Unit at Brooks Equity. Floor 12. No subject line. No dramatic urgent heading. No commentary needed. The footage was its own kind of slap, unwrapped and undisguised. On floor 12, Marlene, head of HR, opened the file. She hadn't been told the contents. Only one directive from Zuri. Strict confidentiality. The moment Edgar appeared on screen, cutting the brakes, Marlene stopped breathing for 3 seconds. She didn't need to rewind, didn't need a name tag. She knew that face. She'd approved that man's payroll, every month. Now she had to sign his suspension. The order went out at 3:41 p.m. Edgar received the email while lounging in the control room, feet propped up, munching popcorn from the vending machine. Subject notice of immediate administrative leave, confidential. He clicked, read, froze, then jumped to his feet. What suspension? On what grounds? No one answered. Because the order didn't come from Marlene, nor from his security supervisor. It came directly from the CEO, digitally signed and time-stamped. In the HR system, Edgar's file was updated under legal review, pending external investigation. The tech department printed his entire access log for that night, matched it with the hallway footage, and cross-referenced the scheduled 15-minute camera outage. The case was nearly airtight. Miles saw the final report and shuddered, not out of fear of Edgar, but because for the first time in his life, he had witnessed accountability unfold in complete silence. No press conference, no memo, no trending hashtag. Just data, light, and an absence of forgiveness. Zuri reviewed the report and signed it with her digital signature, then stood up and left the office. No announcement, no statement. Just a quiet retreat like a wave collapsing a wall without sound. Monday morning. Garage level L1 was unusually silent. No echo of leather shoes. No buzz of security scans. Just waiting. For something no one could name. 8:17 a.m. A gray unmarked police cruiser eased into the technical lot. No siren. No flashing lights. No drawn weapons. Just two officers in plain clothes entering the guardroom. Edgar sat in front of the monitors, sipping coffee, legs kicked up. He spotted them and sneered. Who you guys here for? That accident last week, I wasn't even close to the scene. The first officer handed over the warrant. The second read the Miranda rights, voice flat and steady. Mr. Edgar Mason, you are under arrest for suspicion of felony vehicle tampering, endangering life. Anything you say may be used in court. Edgar shot up, panicked. What hold on, you don't have proof? The officer opened his leather folder, pulled out a printed image from the dashcam clip. A frame of Edgar, crouching beside Zuri's tire, his face clear under the Polaris headlights. Edgar went pale, just 1 second, then screamed. This is a setup. You can't do this. I have a lawyer. His voice echoed through the steel stairwell where a few stunned maintenance staff paused to listen. Zuri wasn't there. She didn't need to be. On floor 15, she was in a video conference with European legal and investment partners. An internal update pinged her inbox. Target arrested. Transferred to local authorities without incident. No commentary. Zuri read it. Didn't smile. Didn't sigh. She simply muted her mic, looked into the camera, and said softly, "Now, let's talk about control." In the garage, Edgar was escorted out the side exit, cuffed. No audience, just a security camera recording the moment as the man who once believed he owned power was quietly swallowed by the very system he thought could never see him. Tuesday? The entire building seemed to hold its breath. The marble floor of the lobby reflected footsteps slower than usual. No one said anything outright, just fragments of unfinished sentences. She knows. Right. Did the footage really catch that moment? I heard it was a dash cam from another car. But how is the CEO still so calm? In the internal cafeteria, lunch was sparse. Those who used to laugh when Zuri entered the elevator alone now kept their voices low. Glances were pulled back quickly. The quiet jabs and ironic comments vanished as if someone had placed a mic in the middle of the table. No one knew where Zuri was, but everyone felt like she was watching them. Not through eyes, but through the choices they made, what they held on to, and what they let slide. On the 15th floor, Zuri sat in front of a large screen, with 3 windows open at once. An internal email titled "Request for Cultural Risk Audit Urgent." A chart of employee complaints ignored over the past 12 months. A confidential file labeled "Microaggressions Logged, Unacted." She didn't need to read every line. It was enough to see them, the complaints quietly dismissed, the behaviors brushed off as harmless, the wounds once labeled overly sensitive. Miles entered, holding a printed report. "You should know. The press is starting to ask questions. There's word that a security guard was arrested for targeting the CEO." Zuri looked at him. "Who leaked it?" "Not sure, but my guess, it wasn't an outsider." Silence. Zuri took the document, flipped through a few pages, then said, "Good. Let them talk. You're not planning to make a statement. No need. When a system starts questioning its own morality, the loudest voice is the question no one can answer." In the lobby, Edgar was gone, but his shadow lingered. In the eyes of those who used to laugh with him, in the flinches of those who once ignored his snide remarks, and in the soft click of the elevator door, as if the whole building was waiting for Zuri to step inside. And she would... just not today. 4 days after the arrest, Zuri convened a special meeting unannounced, off calendar. A tight circle only. The head of HR, the chief of security, the general counsel, and Miles. No slides, no graphics, no handouts. Just a laptop playing the dashcam footage for the 13th time that week. Edgar, crouching, cutting her brake line. Deliberate, wordless, as if entitled. Zuri paused the clip at the frame where he stood up, his face fully visible under the light. She turned to the head of HR. "In our system, who has the first authority to validate a discrimination complaint?" HR. "And who received the first complaint about Edgar?" "Monica Spencer, former administrative staff." What did she say that he often referred to her as a diversity hire, and once asked if she had slept with a manager to get the job? Zuri paused. Miles clenched his pen. "And what did we do?" "We logged it, but couldn't find clear evidence." Zuri nodded. "No blame. Just understanding. Understanding how process becomes a curtain for silence." She turned to the head of security, who reviewed the duty roster. "After the camera outage, we restored the footage, but we didn't question the person who could manually disable the feed. So no one looked into the actions of the person with access to shut it down." "No, ma'am." A chill passed through the windowless room. Zuri pulled a file from her leather case and laid it on the table. On the cover, handwritten in capital letters, "Proposal: a moral system cannot depend on technology." She didn't read aloud, didn't explain, just looked around and said, "When someone like me can be doubted, targeted, and treated as an exception inside the very system she built. The problem isn't a bad actor, it's the belief that a good system is good enough." No one spoke. Not because they didn't understand, but because, for the first time, they were forced to confront a question that couldn't hide behind checklists. Thursday, 8:01 a.m. For the first time in nearly 2 weeks, Zuri Brooks walked through the front doors of the building she had founded. Not through the garage, not the side entrance, no private car, no bodyguard. Just her polished black shoes, an old leather handbag she used back when she was a CFO. Not for show, but to remind herself. This wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated, but it might be the last. The receptionist stood up at once. Every motion slowed like a film in slow motion. Employees paused in the corridor. Her heels echoed sharply across the marble floor. No one spoke. No one smiled. Someone from marketing whispered, "It's her. I can't believe she's just back at work. That's why she's the CEO. Zuri didn't look around. She didn't have to. She knew the eyes on her not glancing anymore. Now, following. Not out of curiosity, but because, for the first time, they understood. She was the epicenter of change. She pressed the elevator button, waited. When the doors opened, no one entered with her. Not out of fear, but because everyone understood. This moment belonged to her. On the ride up to the 15th floor, Zuri didn't check her reflection. She looked at her shadow in the steel panel, faint, but solid. She didn't need to project power. It had already been forged in red paint and cut brake lines. The elevator doors opened. Miles stood waiting. No documents, no iPad, just standing, upright, and nodding. Welcome back. Zuri looked at him. I never left. Zuri had always believed in structure. She used to be an analyst, the kind who designed risk control protocols for multinational corporations. She knew a good process can save a company. But she also knew sometimes that very process is the first to betray its leader, especially when it's built on compromise. And this time, her life was the price paid for a system that trusted time cards more than instinct. Monday morning, an email from the CEO's office was sent to every employee. No CCs, no BCCs. Subject: immediate security reform, effective now. As of today, Brooks Equity will operate under a restructured security framework. This is not a reaction, it is a correction. Our company cannot grow around fear, nor ignore its shadows. Attached was a file: new ethics and threat response protocol. 24 pages. No hollow promises and no slogans, just action. Within 48 hours, the contract with the previous security company was terminated. The entire security staff was placed on temporary leave for ethical screening, background checks, and retraining. Zuri personally approved every new hire for the restructured security division. No assistants, no committees. On floor 12, a new room was built in just 3 days. Ethical Operations Command, not to catch outsiders, but to observe the mundane behaviors often dismissed as harmless. Zuri called it the new blind spot. I used to think the gaps were somewhere far away, in the dead of night. But they're here in broad daylight. In a glance. In the silence that follows something no one wants to name. Miles received new directives. Review all internal complaints filed in the past 18 months. Form a confidential response team for employees who never spoke up. Re-establish contact with Monica Spencer, the employee Edgar once humiliated, and the system failed to protect. Zuri didn't want more investigations. She wanted to restore belief in a system that had taught people to give up hope. And as she closed her laptop that evening, Zuri told herself, I didn't design a system to protect myself. I designed it so that when I'm not here, people like me still survive. Floor 18, executive boardroom. A 12-meter walnut table. Premium leather chairs arranged in a perfect circle. An abstract painting still hung on the wall, placed there before Zuri ever became CEO. A faded piece of the past. Never invited, but never removed. 14 people had taken their seats. The CFO, head of strategy, regional HR director for the West, and 11 other senior executives. All received a sudden calendar invite. Topic: executive culture and structural blindness. No one knew the agenda, only that Zuri herself would be leading. 8:59 a.m. The door opened, Zuri entered. No blazer, no badge, no heels. Just Zuri, hair pulled back, white shirt, tailored dark slacks. She wasn't there to impress. They'd seen enough of her in the footage, in the reports, in everything they had once chosen to ignore. She didn't sit. She placed her iPad on the table, stood at the head, and began. What have we lost in silence? No one answered. A security system, an employee, a life almost taken. She paused. No, we lost the trust of the very people who never speak, and that is the most expensive loss of all. The CFO finally spoke, cautiously. Zuri, I think we're all shocked. No one imagined this could happen. Zuri turned to him. Her gaze wasn't harsh, but it left no room for excuses. You didn't imagine it because this system never forced you to. I had to survive it, so you would believe it's real. Another executive exhaled, preparing to push back. Zuri raised her hand softly, firmly. I'm not here today for condolences. I'm here to say starting next week, all leadership performance reviews will include cultural awareness and ethical behavior metrics. If you don't meet them, you don't keep the title. No one spoke. Because they knew this wasn't a proposal. This was policy. Zuri nodded, then sat slowly, calmly. In the center of the room, not above anyone but no longer beneath anyone either. And as she opened her iPad, the meeting began. But this time, they had to listen. No one could pretend anymore not to see who she really was. Garage L1, 6:35 a.m. No voices. Muted yellow lights spilled over gray concrete. Ventilation whispered in steady rhythm like a hush that refused to end. A small crew drilled carefully into the wall beside parking space L1A. No ribbon, no security, no guests. Just Miles in a gray coat, standing beside the newly restored Range Rover. Its black paint gleamed like armor returned from battle. When the drilling was done, the worker wiped off the dust, then fastened a bronze plaque to 4 anchor points, by hand. No glue, so it could never be peeled off, never fade. Etched deeply on the plaque. Zuri Brooks, CEO and owner. She was once stopped here, so no one else has to be again. Nothing more. At 6:45 a.m., Zuri entered the garage. Miles stepped aside. No explanation, no announcement. She read the plaque, once. She didn't touch it, didn't smile, didn't cry. She simply looked as if reading a will not for herself, but for the generations after her. She turned to Miles. The new security team starts today at 7 sharp. Fully retrained technical, legal, racial literacy. Good. She walked to the car, opened the door, sat down. The bronze plate reflected faintly in the rear camera. She started the engine. On the central display, a message appeared. Welcome, Ms. Brooks. Garage L1 access confirmed. No one needed to verify her. No one had to be called down. The system had finally learned the most basic lesson. She was the owner, and she had always been the owner. It began with a clip. Barely 10 seconds, grainy, slightly shaky, and without a title. Just footage of a man in a security uniform, crouched beside the wheel of a black SUV in a silent garage, holding something that glinted metallic. Captioned simply, "This man cut the brake line of a black CEO's car. Security footage mysteriously went missing, but this car's dashcam didn't." The video first appeared on a Reddit forum about social justice. 3 hours later, it was on Twitter. 8 hours after that, it landed on the front page of Newswise under the headline, "Racist Sabotage Caught on Cam the Attack on CEO Zuri Brooks." Zuri didn't respond. No confirmation, no sharing. But the internet didn't wait for an invitation. On TikTok, hundreds of accounts dissected the footage frame by frame. How Edgar didn't wear a mask. How the building's cameras just happened to fail. How Zuri named no one, yet forced an entire system to change. One TikToker said, in a video that hit over 1 million views, "She's not just a CEO, she's a living lesson in silent power." They blocked her at the door. She didn't shout. They sabotaged her car. She didn't cry. They nearly killed her. She didn't go on television. And now the entire building bows its head. On LinkedIn, a former employee of Brooks Equity posted, "I worked in that building. I saw how people looked at her, and I stayed silent. Now I understand that silence has a body count." Comments poured in. Her resilience is terrifying. In the best way. This is why being black and successful isn't enough. They still try to erase you. She exposed the entire system by doing nothing loud. Zuri read all of it, alone, in her office after the lights were off. She didn't like any posts, didn't comment, didn't save. She simply typed one sentence into her notebook. The world finally looked. I didn't ask it to, but it had no choice. Her assistant, Renee, placed a thick stack of folders on the desk, face expressionless. 22 interview requests in the past 48 hours. CBS, CNN, MSNBC, even 60 Minutes. There's an email from the White House they're inviting you to speak at next month's National Leadership Forum. Zuri skimmed the headers. No surprise, no excitement, no pride. Just the quiet gaze of someone who once needed permission to enter her own building and was now being offered a global stage. A board member called, the only one who hadn't voted for Zuri's appointment as CEO? His voice trembled in the voicemail. Zuri, we need to know how you plan to handle the press. Stocks moving. Investors are uncertain. And, honestly, I feel ashamed. I think I owe you an apology. Zuri listened, didn't delete, didn't reply. At an impromptu press conference outside City Hall, the mayor, once eager to be photographed with Zuri for black voter approval, found himself under fire. Were you aware the building's security cameras were disabled? Any comments on a black CEO nearly losing her life inside her own headquarters? Are you willing to support a broader investigation into racially motivated sabotage? He stammered. I'll speak with Ms. Brooks. At the moment, she hasn't agreed to meet. A reporter said flatly. She hasn't agreed to meet anyone. And that's exactly why the entire country is listening. At a corporate dinner, another female CEO whispered to her friend. Zuri didn't just survive. She weaponized silence. Now even power is afraid to speak to her first. Zuri, on the 15th floor, sat by the window, looking out over the city. No one saw the weight in her shoulders beneath the white blouse. No one saw her palm grip the side of the chair gently, like someone holding onto herself. Renee returned, voice low. Want me to decline everything? Zuri nodded, then added, Decline, but politely. They weren't the ones who pushed me down, but they also weren't the ones who pulled me up. I won't answer, because this time, I'm the one asking questions. Conference room, 6th floor, an internal session titled Inclusion in Practice Beyond the Policy. Originally meant for team leads and mid-level staff, a casual, open dialogue to encourage honesty. According to the internal email, 9:03 a.m., just as the session began, the door opened. Footsteps echoed steady and deliberate. Zuri Brooks entered. No announcement, no invitation, no one dared to stop her. She didn't head to the podium, didn't join the moderator table. She took an empty seat in the front row beside an intern nervously holding a coffee cup. No one said a word. No one dared look directly. The moderator, a marketing team lead, stammered. We welcome Ms. Brooks. Thank you for being here. Zuri nodded. No smile, no chill, just presence. The session began. One employee shared how it felt to go unheard because I'm new. Another spoke of isolation. No one else in the room looks like me. Then a brown staffer quietly said, Sometimes, I don't know if I was hired for my skills or to help fill a diversity metric. No one interrupted, no one excused. Zuri sat, no nodding, no shaking her head, no notebook in hand. Just listening, like a mirror set in the middle of the room, not reflecting faces, but amplifying silence. When the moderator asked, would anyone else like to add something? Every eye, consciously or not, turned to her. Zuri didn't speak. She simply stood, placed her hand gently on the back of her chair as if imprinting her warmth into the space, then walked out, slowly, each step like a knock on the conscience of everyone still seated. The air didn't return to normal, because normal was never safe enough for someone like her. A staffer whispered as she vanished down the hallway. She didn't have to speak. We've already heard everything, loud and clear. Federal Courtroom 312. Day 3 of the criminal trial for intentional vehicle sabotage, second-degree attempted murder, and aggravated racial discrimination. Defendant Edgar V. Hobbs, former security guard at the Brooks Equity headquarters, once described in HR files as mild-mannered, punctual, loyal, now the face forcing an entire city to reckon with itself. Zuri was not present. Her attorney represented her. She no longer needed to look at him. She had survived. And justice was no longer the burden of the victim. It was the responsibility of the system. The police chief delivered the report. Security footage was disabled for exactly 14 minutes and 22 seconds. Weapon used high-grade hydraulic cutters. The red paint was industrial. Waterproof traces found at the defendant's former worksite. And the act of brake line cutting was captured by a dashcam across the aisle, triggered by motion detection. The courtroom fell silent. Edgar sat motionless, the aggression in his eyes gone, replaced by confusion and fear. Then something unexpected happened. A witness requested to speak, named Caleb Johnson, occupation basement custodian at Brooks Equity. He stood, voice trembling but clear. He threatened me before, because I'm Latino, because I didn't speak with the right American accent. He once slammed my mop against the wall and said, "Don't let me catch you wandering near the white folks' cars." I didn't report it, because I was afraid of losing my job. The jury remained silent. A reporter scribbled one line into her notebook. The system failed long before the brake line was cut. The prosecutor ended the morning session with this: he didn't just damage a vehicle. He shattered the sense of safety that a black woman had spent her entire life earning. And no one has the right to take that away. Not even once. Zuri remained at the office. She didn't stream the trial. She only received one message from her attorney. Caleb's testimony changed everything. He wasn't the first. You were just the one they couldn't silence. She closed her phone. Quiet. Then stepped out into the hallway, where an intern was making coffee. "What's your name, Brianna?" "Ma'am. If something ever feels wrong, don't stay silent. My office door is always open." She smiled for the first time in days, not to reassure, but to return someone's faith. Late Thursday afternoon, day 5 of the trial, the courtroom was packed. In the gallery sat civil rights advocates, legal scholars, and former Brooks Equity employees, quiet, uninvited, present. The judge, elderly and silver-haired, spoke in a low tone. "Mr. Edgar V. Hobbs, having reviewed the evidence, testimonies, and jury verdict, the court sentences you to 14 years in prison. No parole eligibility for the first 6. No applause, no outrage. Just a strange kind of silence, the kind that holds its breath, unsure whether to feel relief or shame." Edgar said nothing. For the first time in the trial, he lowered his head. No protest, no outburst, despite what some reporters had predicted. One drop of water fell onto his hand. No one could tell if it was sweat or a tear. Because in that moment, he understood. The true sentence wasn't the number. It was in the eyes around him, no longer seeing him as a gatekeeper, but as the embodiment of a system, now exposed. In the back, Caleb Johnson sat, hands clasped, eyes red. Asked after the trial how he felt, he said only, "He used to think he couldn't be replaced. But I think justice doesn't need to shout, it just needs enough people to stop bowing their heads." Zuri wasn't there, but an old photo of her standing beside her Range Rover, eyes fixed on something distant, was reposted by a journalist with one caption. She never raised her voice, but somehow, we all heard her. It was shared more than 2.3 million times in 24 hours. That evening, a major network sent its third interview request. "We are ready for an exclusive, no question limits, no edits, just your voice." Zuri looked at the screen, then closed it. Instead, she sent out an internal company email to all employees. "Beginning next quarter, all new hires, regardless of role, will undergo mandatory anti-bias training, crisis de-escalation workshops, and restorative justice modules. No signature needed, just a header." Zuri Brooks, CEO. 3 months after the trial, a crisp autumn morning. A thin veil of fog hung low over garage level L1. A group of new employees were being walked through the secured parking area. An HR assistant pointed towards space L1A, where a new platinum gray Range Rover was neatly parked, then gestured to the bronze plaque beside it. "Zuri Brooks, CEO and owner. She was once stopped here, so no one else has to be again." No one spoke. One intern, Brianna, the same young woman Zuri had spoken to on her first week, stepped closer, eyes glistening. She took a photo with her phone. That image would later become the cover slide for the company's internal course Bias Awareness and Structural Equity. On floor 15, the CEO's office had changed. A new abstract painting now hung black, brown, and red brushstrokes layered in defiant motion, not as decor, but as a declaration in color. Zuri no longer sat at her desk much. She moved her auxiliary workspace to an open area where anyone could walk in without an assistant announcing them. She no longer needed nameplates. She needed eye contact, and the ability to listen, the very thing the system once forgot. One day, Caleb walked in. No documents, no appointment. I just wanted to say thank you. Not because you saved me, but because you made it so I don't have to lie to myself anymore. That I deserve the silence. Zuri nodded. No reply. Because some answers don't require words, just presence. Outside, the media slowly faded. No one spoke of Edgar anymore. But on an anonymous blog, one final line appeared. They tried to erase her. She didn't fight back. She rebuilt the ink. And somewhere in thousands of buildings across America, black professionals go to work each day, entering parking garages, wearing suits, badges clipped, laptops in hand. They may not know who Zuri Brooks is, but they walk through doors more freely. They aren't stopped because they don't look like management. They aren't asked to show ID 3 times just to enter where they work. And that is enough. Because what Zuri left behind wasn't just a voice. It was space. And the right to step in without asking permission. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher, one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.